had 3 internships so far. The first one was at a tech startup called Gesture. They basically specialize in 30-minute gift delivery. So things like champagne, flowers, cupcakes now that they added. But there I was part of an AOP program where we were creating digital campaigns on Facebook and Instagram, Snapchat, Google, basically start to finish. So everything like creating the content and then implementing it on those platforms. We were kind of in charge of that and also in charge of like budget. And then my next internship was at a creative branding agency called Simmer. They focused more on like hospitality business. And there I was a strategy intern, but I mainly worked with managing social media calendars, creating social media content, and also working on branding for fast casual restaurants. So like writing up their brand voice, their brand story, things like that. And then my last internship was this current summer, and I interned at GroupM, which is a large media agency. And there was kind of a little bit of a different experience because of COVID. So I was originally supposed to be assigned to the IBM account working on paid search, but because of COVID, it kind of turned into an externship program. So it was different than previous years, and we were basically trained on all the different sectors of the agency. So things like media planning, paid social, and data analytics, we were lectured on those, and then we would have like weekly presentations. But that's a little bit about my internship experience so far.
Cool. And we'll get into like more of the details later as we go on. So Amber.
So I have had 3 internships. My first internship was a fashion marketing intern for a startup jewelry company called Amio. At the time, they had just released a new patented layered necklace. So on that team, I just worked on social media as well as predominantly Pinterest and YouTube. And then after that, I ended up working at NBC. I interned at Peacock, which is their new streaming service. I actually joined the team before most of the team joined. It was just me and the VP on the team, and then I ended up being able to help new teammates come onto the team. And then also this summer, I entered on Peacock as well as CNBC.
So on paper, I've technically had 4 internships. In high school, I was an e-commerce intern for this company called Jam Paper and Envelope. It was a brick and mortar store that sold office supplies. I worked for a company called Sporticulture where I ran the social media and created all the creatives that were posted on social media. My 2 real internships was summer 2019. I interned for Crestron Electronics. So the cool electronics that you see in Pace's classrooms, I was their digital marketing intern. And then this summer, which is now extended into the fall, I am an account management intern at ViacomCBS.
Cool. So if you want to talk about what the application process was like for your first internship versus your most recent, like how did you go about applying? How did you get your internships? Like just talk about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so for my first 2 internships, actually at Gesture and Simmer, they were very similar. Nothing super special. It was just basically applying on a job site like Indeed or Handshake. And then after that, you get the interview and then go from there. But with my internship with GroupM, it was kind of a little bit different. It actually started with an informational interview with someone who was currently working at GroupM. So there was a contact that I had that was looking for interns, and she offered herself for information. So I booked an interview with her. And if you don't know, an informational interview is more just like getting to know someone at the company. The point is not really to get hired by them, but just to kind of get insight on like how it is working there, or like how should I go about applying, things like that. So after that, she was able to review my resume and my cover letter. She gave me pointers on that. And then she told me that after I've made all the changes, she was gonna forward it to a recruiter so that it's put on the top of the pile. So instead of being mixed in with all of the online applicants, mine was kind of put up in the front. So that was like a little bit different. But of course, I did apply also online just so that I was in the system.
Cool.
For me, my first internship application was very simple. I applied on Indeed, and then I had a phone interview, and then I had an interview in person in the loft that the company worked in. But for my most recent NBC internship, I didn't have to apply. I didn't have to, or I didn't have to interview for it. They extended me for my Peacock internship. And then from there, I was added to CNBC. So that was like a pretty good gift. It was actually my birthday when they did it. So it was like a little present for me. But that was pretty good. But for the application process for NBC, it was a video interview. And then I just had to go and that was when the world was open. So I went to 30 Rock and had my interview there.
Cool.
So my application process for both of my two internships were basically Google was my best friend. I used for Crestron, I just looked up marketing internships near where I live, and Crestron's came up because it's a big company around there. And for ViacomCBS, I was recently enlightened on what account management was, and it was more of what I wanted to do, basing off that I already had a digital marketing internship. So I looked up account management internships summer 2020 New York City. And of course, like CBS was one of like the most sponsored ones that came up. I applied to it. It was just a question, this basic, cover letter, basic questions that they ask you. And about a month later, I heard back.
Nice. So I know that interviews can be a little like daunting and scary for people. So if you want to just talk a little bit about your interview experiences, how they've differed from place to place, like phone interviews versus video interviews versus in person, like how was that process like for you?
Yeah, so again, for my first two internships, they were very similar. So it started off with a phone screening interview where they just ask you basic questions, like basic interview questions. And then they would inform you a little bit more about what the role is and kind of gauge your interest in that. And then once you pass the phone screening interview, you're then invited to an interview, like in-person interview. And then they get back to you about a week or so later. And then with my Group M internship, it was a little bit different. So after applying, I got a video interview, which was a very interesting experience, I would say. It's basically like you're on your computer, they give you a prompt, you have a time limit to read the prompt, and then a time limit to respond to the prompt. So it's kind of high pressure situation, a little nerve wracking, but it's definitely a good experience to have because it prompts you to like think on the spot with like pretty thought-provoking questions. And then after that, it was again a little bit different in my case because before my phone interview or my video interview was reviewed, I actually went to a career fair that Group M was at. And the person, like the recruiter that was there, was actually the person that sent me the video interview. So I got to meet him in person. And he told me he hadn't reviewed my video interview. So instead, he did an impromptu interview on the spot. And then after that, he was like, okay, great, let's do a phone interview in like a week. And I was like, oh, okay, great. So then the process is really fast with Group M. So you'll have the phone interview, and then after about a week or so, you'll hear back from them again, whether you receive the internship or not. But yeah, with Group M, it's a very, very quick process, but I definitely recommend like still going to career fairs because that in person, well, I don't know if it's in person now, but talking one-on-one with them, not in a video interview, is very different. So I definitely recommend doing that.
Cool.
Yeah, my experience with NBC was very similar. We started off with a video interview, and then once you pass that round, it was actually this time last year, so I don't really remember the time frames within everything. But after that round, we actually had an informational session with HR at NBC, and they told us about the interview process, what to be prepared for. And then a few days later, they sent us a link to about 6 or 7 different articles that we needed to be prepared for to be able to talk about when we went into our interview. So that was very nerve-wracking. I actually didn't know what Peacock was at the time, and I had no clue that I was going to end up on the team, but I read about it in the articles. And when you go in, we interview with someone who would be on a team that we could possibly work with, and then also an ad sales recruiter, because I was applying to the ad sales internship segment. So that was interesting, but they actually didn't ask me a single question about any of the articles we read. But I think it was good just so that you already know what you're getting into. Like you're interning because you want to learn, but also you need to like present that you can bring value to the team. So I think that was a great way to do that and kind of force us to do it.
Cool.
So for my interview process for CBS, it was basically first I had a phone interview with my actual manager now, and he just asked me very basic questions, kind of just seeing like that I was competent. And then he passed me along. After I passed that, I asked him recently. Only he said he's passed 6 people were sent to him. He sent 3 people to the director of account management, where I met with her. And I think it's really important to do your research on the people that are interviewing you beforehand. So I definitely did that. I looked up her social media and tried to build a connection I could talk about during it, because it was a very personality based interview. She was just making sure that I was like a normal person who could work there. And yeah, she asked me very, very, very casual. It was right before COVID broke out. And then I'd say about the next day after my webcam interview, I got an offer from CBS.
Nice. So what is your most recent or current role, and what exactly do you do in it? Just like talk about like what the day-to-day of the job looks like.
Yeah, so my most recent role was my externship with GroupM this past summer. Again, it's like very different from previous internship programs that even GroupM ever held, because they couldn't do in-person internships. So instead of doing paid search for IBM like I was assigned, I was participating in an externship program, which I think was a class of about 70-ish people. And then we were lectured every week on different roles within the agency. So we got exposed to things like media planning, media buying, data analytics, paid social, paid search, like everything that you could think of, we were lectured on in depth. And then we would have weekly presentations on them. So taking what we've learned from the lectures, they would give you like a hypothetical scenario and you would have to come up with a plan for it. And then you present that. But the biggest thing I would say with that is like I was able to meet so many connections of like professionals from GroupM. So all of the lecturers are GroupM professionals, and they were very much welcome to like connect with you on LinkedIn. You could talk to them afterwards as well. But again, this is a very different experience than the typical internship experience with GroupM, but I think it was definitely still beneficial.
Cool. Yeah, it's a lot different right now than it has been in the past, but I think like any experience is a good experience.
Definitely. For me, I was a creative partnerships intern for Peacock as well as CNBC, but I did supplement and work for the other news broadcasts that NBC has. My day to day was pretty different for 2 different teams, because Peacock is run like a startup within NBC, and then CNBC has a lot of restrictions because it's news, and how are we going to market with news? So for Peacock, I did a lot. I worked on integration, so I got to read the scripts for every new original series that was happening, as well as keeping track of production dates, and keeping track of showrunners, as well as I got to work on a lot of presentations. So I worked on welcome packets. So with each of our 8 launch partners, and then the partners that we brought on after national launch, I was able to work on those packets. So that entails all of their different partnership details, as well as what they would get out of it and how we can supplement our partnership with them. I also worked on status call decks. So I had 3 clients to myself. So I worked on Target, Apartments.com, Subaru, and L'Oreal. So I guess four, sorry. But so I had to head up those status call decks and create them every week, make sure that everything is up to date with their integrations as well as their advertisements on Peacock. And then I also got to present in a L'Oreal status call, which was pretty like nice for me to do. I also ran the merchandise closet when we were in person. And then after that, I was able to work on RFPs for CNBC as well as their different category decks.
Nice.
So I work directly with an agency in the summer to deliver their campaigns. So like where Marinella works, they work with smaller companies. So let's say Fabletics, Milk Bar, Warby Parker, will go to the agency and then they will make a deal with our sales team and we'll create media plans for them. So I was responsible for communicating with the agency clients and getting signed insertion orders and then building out exactly the media plan in one of our marketing website tools that will digitally do it. I use Salesforce to communicate with the team. So I had to talk to client service reps and other people on the team. And now I work on political campaigns. So recently I've been doing both of the presidential campaigns and helping with the media plans on that, as well as I recently got to work on Showtime's Shameless. Their final season's coming up, and they sent us something about their media plan and what they want it to look like. And I have to actually like build out, okay, we want to sell them this type of ad space and why we should do this. And you kind of build it out. And then marketing will create the creative aspect of it and what it would look like and why you should buy it. So that's basically what I've been doing recently.
Very cool. So obviously internships are a lot different right now than they have been in the past. And Marinella already kind of like touched on externships that some internships are doing, but Nina and Amber, if you want to talk a little bit about like the difference working from home versus working in person, since I think both of you did both with the companies you're at currently.
Yeah, definitely. So my internship with NBC started in the spring. So I was working on Mondays and Wednesdays, and the Wednesday before like I'm leaving, they're like, "Oh, Amber, bring your laptop home because we don't think we're coming back." But we just thought it was going to be a test run at that time. And then Monday comes and Wednesday comes, and they're like, "No, we're just not coming back to work." So my spring experience working from home was completely different because they didn't know how I was going to be able to keep up with a lot of my duties, like merchandise. But I just ended up taking more responsibility with PowerPoint. So then as we ended up progressing and into the summer, it was so much more organized. And I feel like I was able to take on more responsibility because we were online. The part that I really enjoyed was that I was able to talk to a lot of people that I wasn't going to be able to talk to otherwise because we're all at home, like, and even though we're working, like people get tired of just like looking at their like assignment to do for the day. So I was able to talk and network with a lot of people in executive levels. My manager on CNBC made sure that that was something I was doing at least 3 times a week, is talking to someone and making sure that they get me in contact with someone else to speak to. So I feel like to that point, it was a great advantage, but I did miss my team a lot because it was a small team. So it was very tight knit for a long time.
So yeah, my first internship at Crestron was in person. To be honest, I feel like they could have done more to include the marketing interns and things. Like I felt like they pushed us away in a certain thing, and I kind of didn't get to speak to as many people as I would have liked. Whereas comparison to CBS, yeah, like I said, I got the job like right before COVID happened. So at this point, like Amber said, we didn't know it was going to be this long term. So it was during like that Tiger King stage of COVID where like everything was just like fine. And then they got like dark and doomy. And everyone of my friends were like, yeah, I'm not even going to get an internship. So it was kind of just hoping that it didn't get canceled. And then they said we have the budget to keep it going. It's a little weird. I'm not going to lie that it is online. I haven't met these people in person yet. So but honestly, they have done a great job of keeping us engaged and keeping us with things to do. There's like coffee meets once a week for the interns. It's the honestly the best you can do with like there's only so much you can do. And I mean, they're just also like leaders of trying to make sure that no one's uncomfortable with going back to the office because and when you like CBS is in Black Rock, which is like a huge, like one of their offices is in Black Rock, which is a huge office. How are you going to have this many people coming back to your office and like the elevators and all of that? So, I mean, for now, they're trying to work out a system, maybe sometimes stay home, sometimes go into actual office. And I think it's good. It'll work out.
That's good to hear that they're at least like making sure that people are comfortable with everything. Have there been any challenges you faced along the way, whether that be like in the internship specifically or like during your application process? Just like talk about any challenges you faced.
Yeah, I could speak on that. Absolutely. I don't think there's really a perfect internship experience. I think there's a lot of negative and positive experiences that can come out of having an internship, but the most important part is really just learning from those experiences, whether they're good or bad. So I can remember, at least in my first internship at the tech startup, that was probably one of the internships that has taught me a lot, both technically, like actually running digital campaigns, but also like leadership and being able to work in teams. It was one of the most challenging ones because it is a tech startup. So the nature of it is like very unstructured and rushed. Every project and task kind of has a pretty short deadline. You kind of have to work with that. And again, if it's unstructured, you kind of have to create that structure for yourself. I remember there was a time where it was 1 week where literally every single intern had a breakdown because we had 2 presentations that were in front of the CEO, plus it was midterms week. So we were all students, so we were all going through it at that week. So it was kind of challenging, but what I really learned from that moment was that you need to speak out and learn how to communicate to your manager in a way that you can come to a compromise with deadlines and expectations. Like, your manager will never know how you're feeling and how stressed you are unless you tell them and like talk to them. There's obviously a work life balance that comes with internships. And I think as PACE students, we're kind of pushed and pressured to be in this hustle mode. But it's okay to take a step back and also voice your concerns. But this also doesn't mean it's just about complaining to your manager, right? Like, you have to take accountability for things. And when you are voicing concerns, you have to be able to be ready to provide possible solutions to your compromise. So again, it's not just about like, oh, this is bad, like I'm stressed out, whatever, but like show your manager what you can do to kind of come to a compromise and do better.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that the challenges I faced when I was interning at NBC were more of a challenge that I put on myself rather than a challenge because of what was going on. Because I remember my first time sitting down, like my first day sitting down in the office, and I was just like, I don't even know how to turn on my computer. Like, why am I here? Like, what's my point? Like, I'm not good enough to be here. Like, I think HR messed up. Like, that's what was in my head for like a good week when I was getting there, and just like getting adjusted what's going on. And I think that I needed to give myself a break, and I needed to be like, Amber, like, it's the first week, calm down. You don't use PC, like just like chill out with that. And once I was able to do that and get into the flow of things, that's when I was able to really become myself and become like the intern that I knew I could be, and also work with my team. But also more specifically on the Peacock side, because I was on the team before Peacock had done launched, whether it be the Comcast launch or the national launch. So there are, of course, a lot of different challenges that go with that, and also knowing how to navigate them as an intern, and knowing how I needed to make sure I was keeping up with things. So I know to like change due dates and like change release dates in PowerPoints and things like that could be really tedious, but it was something that made me like a more critical thinker, as well as my manager would throw things at me like, oh, can you create our budget for the next 3 quarters? And someone who's not that great at math, I like flipped out and like was like so stressed out, but I was able to figure it out. And as long as you communicate and you're like, oh, like I've never done this before, like that's how you overcome things, because you're communicating. And it's more important now that we're remote, I feel like.
Yeah, definitely.
I think Amber and Marinella both brought up great points. When I first started my internship at CBS, I knew nothing about ad sales. and they kind of were just saying a bunch of things to me and expecting me to, I guess, know it. So I had a notebook and I would write down every single thing and I would question every single thing. And when I started getting to the flow of it, I was working with one of the people who this honestly wasn't a nice guy. He would just like embarrass me in emails and stuff. And it was like really the worst because you're just starting off. It's your first month at this huge company. And this kid is just like not even that much older than you, but kind of like picking on you in a way. But whatever, I just kind of got over that. Definitely unclear objectives from your bosses are very common because they'll be talking about things that they've been doing for 15, 20 years and think that the 21-year-old is going to know what that means. And you kind of have to be like, wait, can you explain that again? And another thing that Marinella said about work-life balance, I think one of the worst things I did was I had my work email on my phone. So CBS also operates on West Coast time. So it'd be like Friday, 5 p.m. It's 2 p.m. in California. Or if let's say 8 p.m. would be 5 p.m. in California, I'd be getting emails like, hey, we need this deadline by Monday. And I would be like, oh my God, I'm the only one that's capable of doing this. Like, I need to just whatever I'm doing, stop what I'm doing and do this. But it's kind of like, I talked to my boss about it. He's like, no, like, let them wait. They sent it late. So having that work-life balance where you have a set schedule to work, make sure you're working that and not stressing yourself out. But also you don't want to do the bare minimum, do a little more.
For sure. So this will be like the last question before we open it up to questions from everyone else. So like if you guys have questions, please like think of them. So like after they do this, you can be ready to go. But do you have any advice for people trying to get their first internship?
Yeah, so for me, it's two things. One is apply to everything. Um, you never really know what you're going to get out of your internship experience, and you're really early in your career, and now is kind of not really the time to be super picky with what you're trying to experience, because this is the time to really explore your interests and find out what you want to do. Especially with me, like I never thought that I would get that much experience working at a startup, but that's probably where I learned so many technical skills and soft skills, I would say. So that was very unexpected in my first internship experience. And then the second thing, it's gonna sound kind of cliche, but it's to network. You never really know what type of relationship you can have with certain people. And you don't know what can come out of those connections. So when you contact people, like for me, the connections that I had getting that informational interview for Group M, that was a really big thing that propelled my resume up to the top of the list. And that was through a post on, I think, the Honors College. Someone posted on there that that the internship program was coming out. So contact this person. So again, like you never really know what can come out of those, and just be diligent and take the initiative to reach out to people.
I think those were all really great tips. For me, I think research is the biggest thing you can do. When you're going into an interview, you want to make sure that they know that you know what's going on there, but also they want to know that you have ideas and you can bring something more to the table. And I feel like that's kind of goes along with my second point of like what's uniquely you. I feel like there's so many people when you're applying to a company like GroupM or NBC or CBS, like there are so many people who are applying, and now that it's remote now, the application pool is even larger because we just have to work as long as you have Wi-Fi. So it's very important to find what's your edge, what's your thing. I know for me, it's the fact that I do pageants, which is definitely something that a lot of people don't think would be an edge, but for fun, I compete in interviews. And also I've been to over 24 countries. So I have a different type of perspective, and that's my point of view. And I feel like that's something that will attract people. So it's just what's your edge to it?
Everything I'm about to say is cliche and corny, but I really think you need to go to career services and or not even career services, someone professional, have them look over your resume and make them critique just about everything about it so it could be better. Then you need to create a cover letter that you can kind of alter and use for multiple jobs. That's what I do. I have one cover letter and then I see the job and then I just take out things that'll match more. Also run your resume through a job scan thing that's compared to the job overview and requirements. And as for applying to jobs, my recommendation is do a little bit each day. So maybe spend an hour or two a few times a week so you don't burn yourself out, and do this for like a few weeks, a few months, because yeah, like someone said, like it's better to just apply to so many. And also, like, if you have the confidence, like shoot for the moon, because I never thought I would be working at CBS, and I just like I sent it, and I forgot I applied there, and then I heard back. So really, like, there is no limit on like where you could work. It's but just make sure you do all those steps beforehand to present yourself better.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, everything you guys said. So we'll open it up to questions from the audience. Do any of you have questions for any of them?
I have a
Jennifer?
question.
Or Professor Nankin, you can go first.
Thanks. So I may have missed this, but let me just put on. Okay. There I am. Okay. I may have missed this, but so you apply for your interview. You apply, I mean, for a job, a position, and you find out you're going to get an interview. What do you do to prepare before you've met anyone, before you've heard from anyone? And what did you do?
Can I go? I would definitely research the company and make sure you know exactly what the product or service they're doing is, because I have not gotten an internship because of that single question. It was a very specific question. I didn't know, like a subsidiary or something. And she told me, like, you're not going to go on to the next round because you didn't know that answer. So make sure you know everything and all about the company, from literally like how big it is, like maybe their headquarters, but more so what services or products they are providing.
I would also say research. A lot of companies, their basic interview questions are like, what can you tell us about X company? And you just have to come up with some type of summary answer, and you can't really do that without researching them ahead of time. So definitely be ready for that question, especially with phone interviews, like the screening part.
Yeah, and also you want to make sure you know what's on your resume and that the skills that you list you still have. After talking to a lot of my actual HR coordinator when I was at NBC, she said one of the biggest things is that people put things like Python on their resume because they took one semester of it in school and then they forget about it. So when I'm asking you in an interview, like, oh, like tell me how to do this on Python, and you don't know. So refresh on your skills, and you have to like know what you're bringing and your experiences and how that can help the company.
Thank you. That was very informative.
I also
Jennifer, you
wanted
had a
to
question? Oh, sorry.
I
Nina,
wanted
go
to just
ahead.
add something for my interview for CBS, because it is like a bigger company. I definitely went on Glassdoor and I looked up like interview questions just to see what they could ask. And then I also created in my notes an entire thing of possible interview questions they can ask, or ways I could kind of sell myself to them to make them want me to work for them. And definitely have that, if it's a phone interview, have that in front of you. So they're like, oh, what is your biggest weakness? You have a response to it right there in front of you. So it's definitely helpful.
Gonna add one also other thing, back to the networking thing. Something that I did was I reached out to anyone that I knew that were past interns for GroupM, and I asked them about their interview experience and what type of questions they were asked. So again, that is a really good part into getting insight to what they could possibly ask you for the interview.
Definitely.
Be prepared.
Jennifer, you can ask the question now.
Okay. Hi, guys. I'm Jennifer. I have a question. I don't know if this has changed because of COVID, but I've noticed that in all of the applications that I've sent, one big question is location. And I live in Ohio, but I was planning on moving to New York. But I know that that sometimes hinders you got like depending on, oh, well, she's not there, so I'm not going to necessarily take her into consideration for this specific role. Have you guys experienced that? I mean, I don't know where you guys are, but obviously because now everything can be through Zoom, it's not going to be as big of a problem. But I know that that has definitely been something that I've been knocked on in terms of getting applications and getting to the next step.
I'll go first. So I'm actually from New York, so that's never been an issue that I've directly had to deal with. However, I sat in pretty much every lecture series that NBC offered with HR, and they're talking about applications. And so when you're in a remote internship, they're always talking about how the pool is so much more open because of it. So I feel like they don't really look at where you're from now. It's more so what's your time zone and are you going to be able to work when the team's working? I feel like that's what they're really looking for now rather than, oh, she's New York based or she's in Jersey so she can get to the New York office easier. I think that that's what's more important to them now. And also you can put the pay zip code on your resume. So then since you're looking for New York, like if you're looking for a New York position, you can put that there. So then that's not even something you have to worry about.
I just actually, so for Nina, I just did a ViacomCBS one. And on there, on my resume, I put down, someone told me to put down Pace's zip code. But then it asks you like throughout the questions, it's like, where do you live? And I'm like, I'm not going to lie, but I'm also putting down my school and where I live, but I don't know what the future holds. So
I think you're totally fine. I worked with people all over the country over the summer, but they also did apply to different offices. But I'm pretty sure, I don't know if CBS asked, did they ask, are you willing to travel? Because that's a common question you see on these. I didn't have the problem for that because I live in Jersey, close outside the city. But they definitely like if they don't care about that. They would offer you it if they'd probably ask you in the phone interview, hey, can you work in office? They wouldn't not consider you for that though, 100%.
okay, yeah, they asked if you could relocate, and I was like, yeah, 100%.
Same thing with Group M. I don't think it really matters where you're from, especially if it's a remote position, because in my externship, at least, there was many people in the West Coast and they didn't really have a problem with it. All they really care about is, do you have internet access and is it stable for
Right.
now?
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Enrico?
Hi. I have a bit of a question more for Nina, but you guys can also answer. But is someone who's a freshman that's interested in pursuing account management, do you have any like general like tips or like recommendations, just like academics or like generally for internships or going through like the rest of my like PACE career?
Yeah, have you heard of the Lubin sales team? You should Lubin sales team. You should definitely look into it because account management is not marketing and it's not full sales. It's a post sales position. But I think you need you definitely need a personality for account management. And I think sales will help you come out of your comfort zone and just teach you ways on communication that you kind of can't learn in other aspects of business. So if you want, I could send you some information about the sales team. I think right now that's one of the only things I can offer as advice for PACE, but also you're already on the advertising club, so you got that.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? I'm sure someone has a question. Do you all see yourself sticking with the position or at least trying to stay with the company long term, post-graduation perhaps?
That'll be the dream if I could.
I think with me, the biggest thing that I found through my externship experience with Group M was because I was exposed to so many different sectors of an agency, it really showed me my interest in data and analytics. So, I mean, they have a lot of agencies within Group M that do data very well. So if I could get into that, that would also be the dream.
I would love to stay at NBC. I think my camera's not working. I'm not sure, but I would definitely love to stay at NBC. We had to do a summer presentation at the end of our summer internships, and after speaking with the HR coordinator, that ended up being the person who interviewed me, offered me a position after graduation, and then I had a reminder that I was a junior at the time. So that's been put on hold, but I would love to grow at NBC.
Cool. Jennifer? Sorry, we can't hear you right now, I don't think.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I've been looking for internships over the summer, and I know that because of COVID, a lot of programs have canceled their summer internships or anything to do like apprenticeships, everything. In your experience, like Marianella, you said for Group M, it was a completely different, like more educational in terms of like as opposed to being on hand of doing that. From your experience, do you think that's a good thing that they canceled it because of all that's going on, or do you still think that, I don't know, I just want to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think hands-on experience is always great. I also very much like understand that they weren't able to do that, and I think that they're striving to do that for next summer. But also, because of the success of the program this year, they are continuing this program. So if you're looking for something to do in the winter, I believe they're trying to start up that program for the winter as well as the summer. The biggest thing with this experience for me was agency life is very different. There's so many things that you can get into, but being exposed to all the different sectors in depth really taught me about where my interests lie in. So if you could figure that out sooner than later, that would be great. And I think that was the biggest thing that I got from that experience. And again, I'm going to say the connections that I made there, like having a mentor that now helps guide me through my career endeavors, was really beneficial. So I think that program succeeded for what it can this summer, and it just shows that it succeeded because they're trying to do it for winter and summer.
Mm-hmm.
Any final questions? We'll like stick on for a little bit longer if any of you want to ask questions separately, but thank you so much to Marinella, Nina, and Amber for taking your time to answer questions. You, I think, offered a lot of great insight for everyone. Our next meeting will be on November 4th with our new e-board, so look forward to that. And yeah, thank you guys all for coming.
Thank you guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job. Good job.